When I think of the people who enabled horror, when I think of the great creators in the film industry that allowed horror to truly take shape, two names pop into my mind as the most prolific, the ones that hold the most weight at face value. One of them being John Carpenter, who created Halloween, one of my favorite films. And the second one is Wes Craven, who holds kind of an interesting place in my heart. When I was in middle school, high school rather, I didn't really go to a normal high school. I went to a high school for people who didn't quite fit in. Well, I met an assistant teacher there, because for each class you had a teacher and a teacher's assistant. Well, I was talking about my interests to this teacher, and she brought up movies, and I happened to say in passing that Wes Craven might have been my favorite director at the time. I had always made it a point to watch his movies, especially since he wrote, or at least directed, Swamp Thing. And Swamp Thing, made in 1982, is the very first movie I remember watching. It's not just a horror icon in my mind. To me, this was the first cinematic experience I ever had and can recall having. In my opinion, it's still a damn good movie. The practical effects and the delivery of the movie Swamp Thing, directed by Wes Craven, still hold true to me today. Well, after I had mentioned Wes Craven, she said to me, well, that's kind of cool because my daughter, or stepdaughter, I can't remember, is one of the assistants for Wes Craven. And I thought that was the most interesting thing in the universe. I wanted to know everything this woman knew, and of course, you can only ask so much of a relative of somebody close to someone you look up to. So that conversation ended, and I thought it would just be some interesting side note in my life. Until one day I showed up, and she had for me a VHS copy of Scream. And I thought that was cool enough. Like, the director of this movie saw fit to give me a VHS. Wes Craven himself had written on the VHS, I believe it said something to the amount of, "May your life be full of laughs and screams. To JC from Wes Craven." Now the reason I have to ad-lib is because I lost that tape a long time ago, along with a lot of other things I truly cared about, and a small personal tragedy. But it remained one of my most prized possessions even after I lost it. It remained a possession that was given to me by someone who legitimately introduced me to a type of media and fiction. Wes Craven directed the very first thing I can remember watching. We hear a lot of people nowadays, especially in the horror community, talking about the loss of Wes Craven. And I agree. There's nothing I can do but agree. He has given us so many things, so much in horror that has become iconic, that there's nothing I can do but mourn his passing. Anyone with a love of horror, or even unease, or anyone with a love of creating should feel a loss at the passing of Wes Craven. And I can't really explain why I feel shocked, why I feel I nearly feel betrayed, as if misinformed, like someone should have called me and told me Wes was on his deathbed. Like I had that kind of right. And to say something about him now that he's gone, to look back on my life and imagine that the works of Wes Craven weren't there. I can't imagine it. If there was ever a thing that I could tell Wes Craven, if there was ever something that I could tell him, it would be thank you for giving somebody who was struggling through the highest order of social awkwardness great hope and a lovely gift that he remembered until the day it was tragically lost and beyond. The death of Wes Craven, it feels like the loss of a friend. Rest in peace, Wes. There's really nothing else that can be said other than thank you so much for everything you've given, and rest in peace.